there's a historical context for it, which is that we are more like the Romans than anyone else has been in history. And there's a couple of really important reasons for it. The first is that if you look at the world today, it resembles the Roman world in that you can go anywhere and there's a stadium. You can go to a small town to a big city and there are stadiums. And that's the Roman Empire. You could go to a small backwater province. You could go to the big cities. There was a stadium, there's an arena. But this is a relatively new thing because this has only been, it's the last 200 years have brought us to this moment, because 200 years ago is when they started building the first stadiums again. It's predominantly because in the Victorian era, baseball became quite popular in America, cricket in England, and so they started to build stadiums. And then you get to our moment, which is we're at the culmination. We're like at the golden age of gladiatorial combat, where you've got these vast stadiums, they're packed. There's a ton of money involved. You have all these guys who are making this money, this fame. You don't have that in history when you look back, unless you look at the gladiators and Rome. And again, Greece didn't come close. So we're very similar in that fashion. But we also have something else that the Romans have. We live in cities of millions of people. And throughout history, that's a blip. The fascinating thing is when you look at history as a whole, on a timeline, most of human history doesn't look like the way you and I are living. Cities, abundance, sports, amphitheaters. For the last 1,500 years, or actually, sorry, previous to that, the first city to be 1 million in the world was Rome. And it was also the last for 1,500 years. So when you think about even our surroundings and you look at human history, it doesn't look like that. Romans knew what it was like to be in a city of 1 million people. No one else did until 200 years ago.
Yeah, I think it's hard to remember that, because we often think of, or I think of, like human history of being kind of teleological, going towards like progressing slowly, and then it doesn't enter your mind that like for 1,500 years there were no like big cities, there were no metropolises anymore. What was it then?
And
the
they
next
didn't
one,
have
maybe Paris
the
in the 19th century or something.
Nope. Victorian London is the first city since Rome to be of 1 million.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
wow.
what's crazy is that it goes the same with construction, right? When the Roman Empire collapsed, the ability to build on the scale the Romans did got lost. Things like concrete were basically alien technology. So they couldn't even build stadiums the way the Romans did until we started rediscovering those techniques. And we only put them into use, even though we discovered them in the 1500s, in the 1800s. So really, we're at this wonderful, fantastic golden age of human history. But we're the blip. Most of human history doesn't look like us. The only period comparable is ancient Rome. That's when you go, they were kind of doing it before us. And that's why they are so similar, so many similarities. It isn't coincidence.
Thank you for listening. I really, really appreciate it. This podcast has no sponsors, no production team, and no editors. It's just little old me. And as such, I'm at the mercy of you lovely folks watching and listening. So please do subscribe on YouTube. Click that little bell thing or whatever. Follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Also, I don't want to sell you a stupid mug that you don't really need. So if you can, and most of all, if you want, please support me on Patreon. And here I have to express my eternal gratitude to my patrons on Patreon, aka the producers of this show. As always, without you, comrades, this show wouldn't exist. You better believe it. So massive thanks to Marin Ferrara, Aljaž, Strole, Aida, Mancian, Miha Medved, Medinho, Goran, Gordan, Lorenzo, Jurečuk, Mila, Carmen, Veronica, and Taichi. Absolute legends. Thanks again.